What if I told you that the most incredible stories of the past aren't distant legends, but the key to understanding who we are today? Prepare yourself for a journey that isn't just through the pages of old books, but into the beating heart of our identity. Welcome to an epic adventure, in the truest sense of the word. Today we won't just talk about ancient poems, but we'll explore how epic poetry, with its myths and heroes, has shaped our thinking, our values, and our very culture. From the primordial chaos of the gods to the wrath of Achilles, from the cunning of Odysseus to the founding of Rome, we'll discover together why these stories have never been more relevant. Get ready, because what we're about to reveal will change the way you see the world. There's something magical about stories that last for centuries, right? Stories that don't just entertain us, but speak directly to us, making us reflect on ourselves and the world around us. That's the power of the epic. Its roots run so deep into the soil of our culture that we often don't realize how much they influence us. Think about it, every time we use expressions like an Odyssey to describe a difficult journey, or Achilles' heel to indicate a fatal weakness, we're tapping directly into that ancient and inexhaustible well. Epic is not just a literary genre, it is a bridge between our present and a past where gods walked the earth and heroes accomplished extraordinary deeds. It is the place where fantasy merges with history, where poetry becomes universal narration. Through its stories, the epic transports us to worlds of honor and betrayal, love and hate, courage and fear. But it's not just entertainment. The epic is, in reality, a revelation. It reveals the fundamental values that have shaped our civilization, those that still today, perhaps unknowingly, guide our actions and decisions. It shows us how early societies sought to make sense of the cosmos, to explain the inexplicable. It tells us about the origins of the world, but above all, it describes the deeds of the gods and the adventures of men, weaving their destinies into a complex and fascinating web. This is how the epic has shaped our understanding of history, not just as a sequence of events, but as a tale charged with meaning, of lessons learned at great cost, of triumphs and downfalls. And, at the same time, it shaped our understanding of society, defining roles, expectations, virtues and vices, providing a model of how men should live, fight and die. But to understand the epic, we must first take a step back and immerse ourselves in an even more ancient and mysterious universe, that of myth. Myth is not a fable in the modern sense of the term, it is a starting point, the key to understanding the origins of the world, of the gods, and of the human psyche itself. Before books, before writing, there were words. And these words were myths, passed down orally from generation to generation, shaping the minds and souls of communities. Imagine sitting around a fire, while an elder tells stories of how heaven and earth were separated, how the gods were born from the bowels of chaos, or how men were created from clay or divine sweat. These stories weren't just for children, they were science, theology, philosophy, and the history of ancient civilizations, all mixed together. They offered explanations of the cosmos, of why the sun rises and sets, of why the seasons change. They answered the biggest questions of existence: how did the universe come into being? What is our place in it? And above all, they gave us a window into the divine nature. The myths present the gods not as abstract entities, but as beings who were powerful, yes, but also incredibly human. Jupiter, with his infidelities and his anger; Juno, consumed by jealousy; Minerva, wise but ready for battle; Apollo, artist and destroyer. They are figures with overwhelming passions, fierce rivalries, impossible loves, and ruthless revenge. And their interventions in the human world were not rare, they were the norm. A god falling in love with a mortal, helping a hero in battle, punishing a proud king, these were the events that shaped destiny. But there's more. The myth introduces a system of values and beliefs that goes far beyond simple storytelling. He taught us justice through the punishments inflicted on the wicked, courage through the deeds of heroes, piety through acts of devotion to the gods. These myths were the behavioral patterns that influenced not only Greek and Roman culture, but that laid the foundation for much of Western culture. They defined the concept of the hero, the meaning of sacrifice, the value of honor, and the complexity of human nature. Without myth, the classical epic we are about to explore would not have had the fertile ground to flourish. Now that we've understood the importance of myth, we're ready to delve into the fundamental masterpieces of classical epic. Three names resonate more than others: Homer, with his Iliad and Odyssey, and Virgil, with the immortal Aeneid. We begin with the roar of battle, the dust rising from the Trojan plain, and the clash of weapons. Homer's Iliad, a work nearly 3,000 years old, recounts the wrath of Achilles. And it is not just any wrath, it is the furious, devastating, and self-destructive rage of the greatest warrior Greece has ever known. Achilles, demigod, invincible except for that fatal heel, is the prototype of the Greek hero, strong, proud, thirsty for glory, but also capable of profound suffering. The story is set during the final year of the 10-year Trojan War. It is not the story of the entire war, mind you, but focuses on a brief but very intense period of the conflict. It all stems from an argument. Agamemnon, leader of the Achaeans, offends Achilles by taking away his slave Briseis. The outraged hero retreats from the battle, vowing not to fight until the Greeks have paid the price for his absence. And the price is very high. Without Achilles, the Trojans, led by the noble Hector, seem unstoppable. The Iliad explores eternal themes: honor, that virtue that defines a man in battle; glory, the immortality earned through heroic deeds; war, in its brutality and its tragic necessity; and death, a constant, inescapable presence that awaits every warrior. The climax, the beating heart of the Iliad, is the duel with Hector. Hector, the Trojan prince, is the perfect foil to Achilles. He is not a demigod, but a man, a loving husband, a doting father, a dutiful son, and the bravest defender of his city. The duel between Achilles and Hector is not just a clash between two exceptional warriors, it embodies the struggle between two civilizations, the Greek one seeking individual glory and the Trojan one defending its homeland, and between two ideals of heroism. Hector's death, at the hands of Achilles blinded by grief at the loss of his friend Patroclus, marks the point of no return, the condemnation of Troy. But it is also a moment of profound humanity, when Priam, king of Troy, secretly goes to Achilles' tent to beg for the return of his son's body, and the two enemies find themselves united in grief. The Iliad is not a simple war chronicle, it is a meditation on human nature, on fate and the meaning of life and death. We leave the blood-stained walls of Troy to set sail across stormy seas with the Odyssey, the other masterpiece attributed to Homer. If the Iliad is war, the Odyssey is the journey, the return. It recounts the periplus of Ulysses, or Odysseus, to the Greeks, king of Ithaca, the man of multifaceted ingenuity. After the fall of Troy, while the other heroes return to their homes, Ulysses is condemned to an odyssey, a 10-year journey filled with dangers and pitfalls before he can see his beloved Ithaca again, his wife Penelope, and his son Telemachus. This poem is a hymn to human cunning and ingenuity. Ulysses is not Achilles, he does not win with brute force, but with his mind, with his words, with the ability to adapt and overcome difficulties. It is no coincidence that he is the man who invented the Trojan horse. On his long and winding journey home, Odysseus faces an incredible array of monsters, dangers, and trials. He encounters the Cyclops Polyphemus, blinding him with deception. He resists the bewitching song of the sirens by tying himself to the ship's mast. He navigates the fury of Scylla and Charybdis, and he is held for years on the island of the sorceress Circe and the nymph Calypso. He loses all his companions, but not his hope, nor his determination. His return to Ithaca is not only a physical arrival, but a triumph of perseverance against all odds, of fidelity to one's destiny, and above all, of love for one's country and family. When, finally, after 20 years of absence, Ulysses returns to Ithaca in disguise, he must face the final test, to reconquer his kingdom from the hands of the Procyi, the suitors who have sacked his house and threatened Penelope. The scenes of recognition between Odysseus and his faithful wife Penelope, or with his old dog Argos, are among the most moving and iconic in all of literature. The Odyssey is the story of a man who, despite suffering and temptation, never forgets who he is and where he wants to return. From Greece we move to Rome, and from oral and then written epic, to authorial epic with Virgil's Aeneid, a Latin epic work commissioned by the Emperor Augustus himself. If Homer celebrated Greek heroism, Virgil had an even greater task, to narrate the birth of Rome, of that civilization that would dominate the ancient world. The story features Aeneas, a Trojan hero, son of the goddess Venus and the mortal Anchises. The poem begins with Aeneas fleeing burning Troy, after its destruction at the hands of the Greeks. He is no ordinary fugitive, he is a man with a destiny, a heavy burden on his shoulders, to save the Penates and found a new city. His is a long and difficult journey across the Mediterranean, a sort of Odyssey with a very specific destination, a divine plan. Aeneas and his companions face storms, land in unknown lands, meet legendary characters such as Queen Dido in Carthage, with whom he experiences a tragic love that will end in despair and betrayal. Aeneas, although he loves Dido, is forced by the gods to leave, because his destiny is not love, but the foundation of Rome. He finally arrives on the coasts of Lazio, where he must fight to settle and unite the local peoples. The Aeneid is not just the epic of a hero, but the saga of an entire people. It is the story of the origin of the Roman people, the people descended from Aeneas. Through his exploits, Virgil celebrates the greatness of Rome, not only in terms of military might, but as the guardian of values such as pietas, virtus, and gravitas. The poem celebrates Rome's civilizing mission, its role in bringing order and law to the world, and ultimately, its destiny of dominion. It is a work that, while taking inspiration from Homer, has its own profoundly Roman identity, projected towards the future, towards the creation of an empire. Aeneas is not just a warrior, he is a founder, a bearer of civilization, whose personal sacrifice serves a greater good, the birth of a nation. And so, we have journeyed through millennia, from the mists of myth to the foundations of Rome, guided by the voices of Homer and Virgil. We have seen how epic is not simply a collection of old stories, but a window onto the past, a way to understand the deep roots of our culture. Through myths and stories of heroes, we have been revealed the genesis of values that still resonate within us today: the importance of honor, courage in the face of adversity, tenacity in pursuing a goal, loyalty to family and country, and the weight of destiny. These poems are not just historical artifacts to be studied in school, they are alive, still breathing, and continue to shape our identities, provide us with role models, and make us reflect on the big questions of human existence. They remind us that, despite the millennia, man's passions, fears, and dreams remain, ultimately, the same. If you've been captivated by this epic journey, don't miss the next chapter of our cultural exploration.